It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast.
On this edition of the Kirby on Sports podcast, we continue our division previews. With this week's episode, we talk about the NFC and AFC North. It all comes your way next. You're listening to the Kirby on Sports podcast.
I'm glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby, on Sports Podcast.
All right. I am here now with good friend of the podcast and owner of MPT Now, standing for More Personal Transformations. He's been a personal trainer for pretty much as long as I've known him, and we're gathered here today for a very special announcement. My good old friend, John Moore. John, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks so much for stopping by. I'm glad to be on your podcast, and I think we keep podcasting back and forth. So we have this connection that's a podcast connection outside of everything else we've been through. So it's really cool that we have this connection and we can help each other grow. So what we're getting ready to do is a giveaway. The giveaway will be 1 month of free classes at the brand new More Personal Transformation Room. So it's MPT Now Transformation Room. You can find us on Facebook under that name. And here's how this whole thing's going to work. You want to tell them or you want me to tell them?
I will tell them. So you have to follow us on Facebook, the Kirby on Sports podcast. So find us on Facebook at the Kirby on Sports podcast, and you can find John's page.
And that is MPT Now Transformation Room.
And when this episode comes out, this interview will be airing right before the next episode. We will have a keyword that you have to listen for at some point during this episode. If you're liked with the Kirby on Sports podcast on Facebook and John's page, MPT Now, correct?
Oh, it's the page is MPT Now Transformation Room. There is another page called MPT Now. We have both of them, but this one is specifically targeting the MPT Now Transformation Room Facebook page.
So you will not be entered to win if you are not liking MPT Now Transformation Room on Facebook. There will be a keyword at some point during the podcast, and John will throw up a Facebook post on MPT Now Transformation Room. You have to comment the keyword. And if you like the Kirby on Sports podcast on Facebook in MPT Now Transformation Room, you will be entered to win. What was the prize again?
So the prize is 1 month of unlimited classes at the MPT Now Transformation Room. We have a variety of classes, multiple yoga classes, strength classes, yopai. We have a lot of different things. And by the time that actually comes out, there'll be even more classes in there.
Yeah, listen, with this pandemic and everything, ladies and gentlemen, it feels like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You might want to reach fitness goals. And John Moore in MPT Now Transformation Room is here to make that right. 1 month free personal training group classes. It's going to be a great deal. So when are we going to announce this?
So we are having our grand opening in September. We do not have the exact date yet, but it will be in September. It will be on a Saturday. We just don't have the exact date yet.
All right. So that will be announced later on. Check our social medias, Kirby on Sports Podcast on Facebook, MPT Now Transformation Room on Facebook. And stay tuned for the special keyword that you have to comment on MPT Now Transformation Room on Facebook in order to win. Now let's get rolling on the Kirby on Sports podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of the Kirby on Sports podcast, continuing our division preview. But before we move any further, we would like to thank our sponsors, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, and Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation. Thanks to our music by Productions by Quet and intro by Dave Johnson. Without our sponsors' support, the Kirby on Sports podcast would not be where it is today. On this week's episode, we will be talking about the NFC and AFC North. As always, joined by my guys, the three-man booth, co-host and lead contributor Dan Dempsky. Find him on Twitter at Dan_Dempsky97, and the Swiss Army knife, Carlos Martinez. Gentlemen, good evening.
What's up?
Good evening, sir. How are you?
It's pretty good. These episodes have been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed doing it, and we have one more, the NFC and AFC East after this, and then the season's pretty much
Hold
over.
your horses there, Dan.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, you said it. You said it last episode. I was just repeating.
Okay, but I have a right to say it. I have a vested interest in such.
Fair enough.
You didn't get my joke there. I said the last preview is the NFC and AFC East, and then the season will be over, and then Carlos interrupted me, and I was going to say, oh, psych, we have a whole 18-week season to go after that. But, oh, man.
We need the symbols.
Yeah. We're going to switch things up a little bit. We're going to go, starting with the NFC North, we're going to talk about team by team in order of how they finished last season. I feel like that's going to be a better way to depict information to our listeners, and it's going to be a great way to get our point across about what we want to about these teams. So
shout out to Carlos for that idea. That was a good one, Carlos.
That's why he's the Swiss Army knife.
How about you give me my credit, Kirby? Stop trying to steal
Carlos
my ideas.
Martinez, trademark that. Trademark it. Am I right?
Trademark my name, unfortunately. It's a common name.
It's too common.
Yep.
Yeah, your name is there is actually a Carlos Martinez, a pitcher in the MLB, I think with the Cardinals, if I remember correctly.
Who cares? We're here to talk about football, the real American pastime.
Yes. A lot better than football, am I right?
Oh,
No.
man.
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately, football is the world's game. Football is America's game.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I can agree with that for sure. So starting off with the NFC North, the Green Bay Packers. I'll start with you, Dan. Let's start with the Green Bay Packers.
Well, I think they're the most sure team in this division this coming up season. I mean, they were the number one offense last year. Really good running the football, as well as obviously with Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball. So I don't think offensively they'll really have any issues. They had a pretty good draft as well. I feel like they addressed both sides of the ball. It's funny with all the drama in the offseason with Aaron Rodgers, he was going to go elsewhere. He was tired of the Packers and the front office and all that mess. It all just kind of disappears, all of a sudden, and no one's really talking about it anymore. And he's coming back for another season. So I don't have a whole lot to say about the Packers that, hasn't been said before. I think they're one of the most talented teams in the NFC. I think obviously their big criticism is once they get deep into the postseason, they really haven't been able to get over the hump like they should have been able to. They've only made the Super Bowl obviously one time in Aaron Rodgers' career, and he's still going to be a Hall of Famer, I think, at the end of his career. But I think that's one thing, this season, the Packers they have to get over that hump, and other than that, I really think they're the best team by far in this division, and they're obviously one of the most experienced teams when it comes to having success and having success in this division as well. They've done it for a long time. And I think the relationship with LaFleur and Rodgers, it was, I think it was a little questionable last year. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think they've probably worked some stuff out in the offseason, and, hopefully they can put the past behind them. And, like I said, the Packers they're going to be the Packers. They're a pretty good defense, 13th ranked last year. They didn't really lose a whole lot in free agency. They're still going to be a really solid football team. And I think by far the most talented team in this division this upcoming season.
Well, one thing I'd like to add to that, everything you said, I really agree with. But one thing I would like to add is going back to all this drama that had to do with Aaron Rodgers in the offseason and questions on whether he was going to return or not. I don't really want to attribute this to the Packers sort of failing, because the Packers are a storied franchise and they still have their starting quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. He did not go elsewhere. But all this drama that unfolded over the offseason, could that potentially fracture things and lead to bad chemistry within the organization so they don't perform well? I mean, that's just one thing that came to my mind. I could be talking like I'm a total buffoon, but I mean, that's just one thing I think about. How does the chemistry affect what happened between Aaron Rodgers and the front office? Because you look at the very beginning of this season, in the opening press conference Aaron Rodgers had, he revealed a lot.
I'm not going to lie. That was a legendary press conference.
He was telling me about, like, what was it? Like how the veterans that weren't re-signed were treated walking out the door and stuff like that. He listed names.
I mean, here's the thing about the Packers is that for them, the way they run their organization, from what I understand from everything that I've heard lately, is that basically nobody is above the team. Basically, like nobody's bigger than the brand of the Packers, right? So like everybody gets treated the same. Nobody gets favorable treatment. Like they did it to Brett Favre when they sent him out of town to replace him with Aaron Rodgers. And then they're, kind of trying to do the same thing to Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers is trying to change that basically. From everything that I've seen and heard, I mean, it doesn't look like that's going to be a problem. Like team chemistry is not going to be an issue, because it seemed like everybody had Aaron's back. No, there's been no reports. And besides, everything that came out, it was never out of Aaron Rodgers' mouth. It was out of, somebody in Aaron Rodgers' camp, somebody, this, somebody that. It was never Aaron Rodgers himself coming out and saying anything.
A source told a source told a source.
Yeah. So, and, I mean, these are all problems that like have been happening for a while now. He's obviously been, asking Green Bay, like, hey, bring me to the table. Let me help you guys bring free agents in, because people aren't coming to Green Bay just to come to Green Bay. They're coming to Green Bay to play with me. So like, he just wanted to be more involved in conversations and, be consulted with, kind of like the other greats, kind of like how Tom Brady gets consulted with about certain players, kind of like how Peyton Manning did when he was with the Colts. Hell, Peyton Manning could get a guy cut from training camp by just saying, hey, get him out of here, And Aaron Rodgers, he's a legend. He deserves that right, to be completely honest. But the Packers didn't want to give it to him. Dan, to your point about LaFleur, they had issues their first season. Last season, I think they worked it out completely. Last season was their better season. So,
I couldn't remember if it was last year or the year before where they had problems.
Yeah, it was the first year where they lost to the 49ers in the championship game, where they were all the talks of like, do they get along or not? And then I guess whatever issues they had, they worked it out in the offseason going into this season, or this past season. And now then obviously they had a great season. They, made it to the championship game again, and unfortunately lost to Tampa Bay. But I feel like this season, the team is really behind him, because they know like this is probably Aaron Rodgers' last season as a Packer. Him and Adams, they put up that Last Dance picture. So to me, I think both of them, because now both of them are on bad terms with the Packers. I feel like they're saying basically right now, this is the last go around. And after this, I mean, it's over. Like Jordan Love is probably going to take over, and then whoever they are. And the Packers are kind of starting to now like buy into Aaron Rodgers by trading for Randall Cobb again. A guy that Aaron Rodgers really trusts. But
that's something Rodgers wanted the Packers to do.
That's what I said. Yeah. So like now they're starting to like try to the Packers, I feel like, came out looking really bad out of all this drama, to be honest. I feel like Aaron Rodgers, because again, Aaron didn't say anything. Everything that was coming out was either from the Packers or from people around Aaron Rodgers, but never Aaron Rodgers himself. So to me, I feel like the Packers came out looking really bad out of this whole drama stuff. And I feel like the team and all the legends too, it seems like have Aaron Rodgers' back. And like are in agreement with him that like the way the Packers treat people who, do so much for the franchise, they kind of just kick him out the door and don't even really give him anything. So he wants to change that. So I feel like they all have his back. And I just feel like Aaron Rodgers really came out looking better in this whole situation than the Packers did.
I want to go back to something you said earlier, Carlos.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about Peyton Manning, with the Colts especially. He could, he kind of had all the power there. I think the big difference between he and Aaron Rodgers' situation is obviously the Packers have had several Hall of Fame quarterbacks, obviously. So they kind of have a different track record when it came to, having these once in a generation type quarterbacks. Whereas, the Packers or the Colts rather, when Peyton Manning got there, he was like, he was it. I mean, especially as far as Indianapolis, they had only been there for just over 10 years when Peyton Manning was drafted. So he was kind of that guy. I mean, it's a little different for the Packers as a franchise because they've had, 50 to 60 years of appearing in championships and winning championship games. So it's a little different. Like I get your comparison there. It's definitely comparable, but I think the two team like cultures and like history is quite different. But it is something that's also worked for the Packers in the past before. Like, they're able to somehow continue to stay competitive and continue to get back to, to make deep playoff runs when they release, players and stuff like that. So I'm not saying
but they can never get over that NFC championship hump. That's the problem.
True. Yeah.
And most of the time it's because Aaron Rodgers sometimes doesn't trust the guys he's got out. I mean, let's be honest. The reason why they make a lot of these championship games is because of Aaron Rodgers. They got Devontae Adams, now, but like think about like before that, like who did they have? I mean, when they won the Super Bowl, they had a pretty all-star team, but like ever since then, they just haven't really invested the way they did before. And Aaron Rodgers is saying like, hey, I can bring free agents here. You just got to use me. Let me be a resource to you guys. And they don't want to use him.
Well, he's also struggled in the playoffs too, and in a lot of playoff games. And I think, I mean, it goes both ways, obviously. So it is strange though to me how great they are of a team in the regular season, and then it seems like when it comes down to the NFC Championship game or the NFC Divisional Round game, they kind of seem to crumble quite often in the last 10 to 12 years that Aaron Rodgers has been the starting quarterback. So I think I think they have a good shot this season. Once again, obviously, it's just going to be about, like you said. Also, they've battled a lot of injuries the last few years as well, and they've had a really tough time with that. So if they stay healthy on offense, I think they make a pretty good run at stuff, especially having, you have Aaron Jones, who was the fourth leading rusher in the NFL last year. That was huge for them. Took a lot of pressure off Aaron Rodgers. Definitely I think that's going to make a big impact this year again as well.
Yeah, bringing him back will be huge. Because like you said, it relieves a lot of pressure off of Aaron Rodgers. And I think signing Randall Cobb, a guy that he does trust, that, although albeit he probably isn't as good as he was back when he was with the Packers last time around. And obviously he's been like on a whole escapade since then. He made a stint at Dallas. He had a cup of coffee with Dallas, to be completely honest. It was more, it was a cup of coffee. I like
that term, cup of coffee.
He had a cup of coffee with us. It was only for like a season. It didn't work out. But I mean, it's a guy that when he played with Aaron, he really thrived. And it's a guy that Aaron Rodgers trusts. So it's going to be it's going to be it's going to be a solid slot receiver for them. They'll have like Lazard, Adams on the outside, and then they'll probably have Randall Cobb on the inside, running the slot. So it gives him another weapon. And obviously you got Aaron Jones in the backfield. And then that defense, I mean, they had some secondary problems. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure if they really did much to fix them. I can't remember any big signings that they made.
The only thing in free agency was they re-signed Kevin King, which can't remember what number he is on the depth chart. I don't know if he's
wasn't he the guy that got lit up by Brady?
Ooh, it's a good question.
Yeah, because that guy who got lit up by Brady,
I'm pretty sure he was the one that got lit up on that one on the pass play before halftime.
Okay, yeah.
I'm almost positive. But anyways, Kirby, you got any thoughts on this?
I don't have any more thoughts besides if the Green Bay Packers can handle their business on the field. I mean, this is my only thing. Will they forget about the drama, go out and play football? Because if they do that, I think they'll be fine.
Yes, by the way, Kevin King is the guy that got lit up by Tom
And
Brady.
he got re-signed?
I mean, that was probably his worst moment. I don't know if he,
1 year contract. So, I mean, they'll probably
also don't forget salary cap is a little lower this season. They probably just need to just fill out the roster.
A lot more 1 year deals this year than we've seen in a while.
Yeah, because next year the salary cap is expected to just boom. So, but I mean, I think I think that they're fine on the drama side. I feel like that's all over and done with. It seems like Aaron Rodgers has completely moved on from it. He's like, listen, like I'm here with the guys now. Like this is what I care about, and it seems like from everything I'm hearing from from people who have been in Packers training camp, it seems like the team is in good spirits right now, that they're just happy to be together again.
And if that's the case, sorry, Dan, but if that's the case, then I don't see the Packers stumbling or tripping in any way, shape, or form. And that's about all I have on the Packers.
I mean, we'll find out once they hit the field for the regular season.
It's going to be interesting.
By the way, Aaron Rodgers Tuesdays are coming back to the Pat McAfee show, so it's going to be a good
legendary
season. Those were the best. Stuff. I'm so excited for those.
Oh, yeah. Pat McAfee, A.J. Hawk, and Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, it's going to be a good time.
Can't beat that.
I was going to say, we talked about their secondary. Their first-round draft choice was Eric Stokes from Georgia, defensive back. Got a nice little contract. Obviously, those first-round picks, they get pretty solid rookie contracts. So watch out for him, see if he makes a difference for their secondary. They definitely had some rough patches last year in that area. So definitely something to watch out for this year for the Packers.
By the way, Kirby thinks that Jordan Love is going to be a Hall of Famer by the way he played his first preseason game.
That's right.
I did not even watch Jordan Love play in the first preseason game.
Nah, bro. You
saw it on Twitter, though.
Yeah, and you started putting in the group message. You're like, Jordan Love, future Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah, I did not say that, but thank you, Carlos.
You're welcome.
All right, time to move on.
With Brady.
Time to move on. The 8-8 Chicago Bears finished last season.
Bear down.
And the only thing I'm going to start by saying, will the Bears continue to be the Bears? Or with this acquisition with Justin Fields at quarterback, will they finally get their act together and turn things around? I'll start with you, Carlos.
Oh, man, Justin Fields looks really good in that Bears jersey, though. I won't lie. He looks really good as in the Bears jersey. From what I have been hearing from ESPN Daily, they're like whatever daily podcast or whatever, they did a story on the Chicago Bears. And from what I heard on that, it sounds like that they're going to really take that Matt Nagy, even though he's kind of on like the hot seat right now because of everything that went down with Mitchell Trubisky and everything like that and the failed, the last two like failed seasons. It seems like he's really going to take his time. It does not seem like he's going to rush putting Justin Fields in. He's from what he told Louis Riddick, the ESPN analyst guy or whatever. He's going to wait until like he knows Justin Fields is ready. So like they're going to go with Andy Dalton for now. And I feel like honestly, the best thing for Justin Fields, especially with this O-line that the Bears have, is for him to sit and just kind of learn behind it. Let Andy Dalton get destroyed and then let the Bears fix the O-line. That way, when he comes out and plays, he's not getting, hit 50 times a game, that stuff messes with a young quarterback. So like he needs to, also like kind of let his body develop too. And like that way he can grow more into an NFL body. And just kind of learn from a veteran guy, like, the Red Rifle. So, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. The Bears will be the Bears though. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know.
I really don't see them doing much this year. I mean,
if they're going with Andy Dalton, no, they're not going to do a lot.
I don't see them doing much this year. I could see them regress and fall a couple spots too. I mean, how
much further can you regress for Mitchell Trubisky?
Okay, no, I meant in terms
Nick
of
Foles.
division, place in the division. But I mean, I'm just saying, you have the Bears, the Vikings, and the Lions.
They did make the playoffs last year.
Yeah, they did. They did the Nickelodeon wild card. Remember that?
That was an interesting game to watch. But anyways, go on, Kirby.
So, I mean, you have the Bears, the Vikings, and the Lions. I mean, that was like the bottom of the barrel. And the Bears 8-8, they squeaked into the playoffs and lost. So, I mean, I don't see them improving much from last season, in my opinion. And I feel like it's just going to come with time, slowly work Justin Fields into the starting role and build weapons around him. And then the Bears might do something, but it's going to be a multi-year project, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this was a team last year that started 5-1, and they lose 7 of their last 10 games. So,
that was disappointing too.
I mean, I don't know what happened. They completely collapsed.
Mitchell Trubisky, that's what happened.
Yeah, true. They also,
I never understood that pick. I just never did. I never thought Mitchell Trubisky was good.
He wasn't even that great in college.
That's what I'm saying. He only played 1 year in college, in which he was on the team for like 2-3 seasons, only started his 3rd season. The other 2, he was behind Sam, whatever the frick his name is.
Sam Howell, yeah.
Yeah, Sam Howell. And, the only reason why Mitchell Trubisky was more talented, but the problem is that he could never get the team behind him, and Sam Howell could. The guys responded better to Sam Howell than Mitchell Trubisky. Mm-hmm. And who did Mitchell Trubisky play at North Carolina? I don't even think he even played Clemson while he was there.
I'm trying to remember if they played in the ACC championship game. I can't remember.
They did not play. No, they didn't play in the ACC championship game.
Wasn't? Okay.
No. So, like, I never understood that pick. The Justin Fields pick, I understand, because Justin Fields, to me, I don't understand why he dropped that far, and because I think he's super talented. I think he got beat up in the draft process. So, like, to me, I think that this was a steal and the right pick for the Bears coming off of Mitchell Trubisky. But I never understood why they took Mitchell Trubisky over like the Deshaun Watsons, the Patrick Mahomes. Although I feel like Patrick Mahomes, again, is a product of, the place he went to, of Kansas City, and being behind Alex Smith and, all that stuff. I've gone over that millions of times. But yeah, I just hope that they do Justin Fields right.
Yeah, I'm just looking here. Mitchell Trubisky played 9 games in his first two years, and then his junior season he started in 13 games.
And he probably was coming in at like, I don't know, the 4th quarter when they didn't need him anymore.
He finished with 30 touchdowns. I mean, that's not bad, but for getting drafted where he did.
They drafted him because of his intangible, or because of the intangible, because he was he's tall. He was, he had the quarterback build, which is not what you should ever base why you draft a quarterback, based on the results. Are they a winner? Deshaun Watson was a winner,
right?
Like I never understood
Patrick
that.
Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes didn't really win much, but he had a huge upside, huge potential. Yeah. I mean, he had a cannon for an arm.
Right.
You know, like the fact that you take, you know, Mitch with fucking Trubisky, you know, just because, he's 6'5", whatever, how tall he is, you know, and because, you know, he's built like an NFL quarterback, that means nothing to me. What did he do in college? Was he a winner? Did his team actually compete against the best? No, they never did. I like that. Mitchell Trubisky always triggers me, man. Like I never understand it.
Yeah,
I don't really understand.
They beat Florida State and Miami, but really outside of the ACC, they really didn't play anybody. His senior season, they lost.
Yeah, but it was Florida State when they weren't Florida State anymore. Florida State has been Florida State.
They were
ever
number
since.
12 at the time. So I mean, and of course that was 5 years ago now. So Florida State wasn't. They were on their way down. They weren't all the way down that they are now. But and then they lost to Stanford in the Sun Bowl. So the Sun Bowl is that's
not important.
Bowl, so.
What bowl is important nowadays?
True. It's all become irrelevant. Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Kirby, and you, Carlos. I think they're an average team again this year, probably below average. I don't see a whole lot there. It looks like they're trying to they went out and drafted 2 offensive linemen after they took Justin Fields, which may not seem like much now. But maybe they see in a couple years when, you know, he becomes the guy. Because I think it's possible he will start late in the season. I think the Bears are going to get to a point where, you know, their season's over. They want to see what they have in the future, and obviously everyone's going to be saying, you know, let's see Justin Fields. And I think we'll get a chance to see him towards the end of the year. You know, start 3 or 4 games down the stretch. So. That's at least what I think, is I think it'll be a lost season by then. So, yeah, they were like 29th in offense last year. And obviously when you have Nick Foles and Mitchell Trubisky, you know, as your quarterbacks, you can't get much worse than that. And they signed 3 defensive players in free agency. They got an edge rusher. They signed Desmond Trufant, which is a pretty decent signing.
Yeah, I like Trufant and what he did. Yeah, he played with Atlanta, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really found Trufant to be a really good player.
Yeah, he's a solid player. So I think they made steps to improve. I just don't think, you know, first of all, I don't think Matt Nagy's the guy. I don't get him as a head coach. I think he's a good coordinator, but I just don't see it. I don't see his vision as a head coach. And I think this is really going to be his last year with the Bears.
Well, I think the other thing with Matt Nagy is he didn't pick Mitchell Trubisky, though. He came after Mitchell Trubisky was picked.
Yeah.
So, so to me,
that was the Mark Trestman era.
Yeah. So, like, to me, that was awful.
Yeah.
But like, to me, this is this is the guy. This is the guy, you know, that I think, because Justin Fields can do a lot of, I guess, kind of Patrick Mahomes-y kind of things, you know, where he can, you know, he's just more mobile than Mitchell Trubisky ever was. You know, Mitchell Trubisky could move, but not the way Justin Fields could. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here if he gets more time, because now he can work with a younger quarterback that he actually chose.
It's funny to me that Nagy was only the offensive coordinator for 1 season in Kansas City in 2017. And then, you know, he gets the head coaching job. I think it was a surprising hire in a lot of people's minds. I don't think he's a bad coach. I just don't think he's a good fit.
You just don't think he's the right coach for Chicago.
Right. And to be honest, it's the Bears, and I don't know who would be the right fit because it's the Bears, but I just don't see him fitting with that town. That's just what I think. But
I agree with that, Dan. I feel like this Bears process, they're taking baby steps in order to improve. They're taking small baby steps, and I feel like they're going to slowly transition Justin Fields into the starting role. If they throw Justin Fields in halfway through the season because Andy Dalton sucks, they're making a terrible mistake. But who knows? The Bears are the Bears. They might do that. And if it comes down to finding a new head coach, if that's what it's going to take, then do it. But I feel like that's what the Bears need to do in order to succeed. It's going to be a multi-year process in order for the Bears to stop being ridiculed as the Bears are just the Bears.
I think one of my biggest concerns is that, Andy Dalton gets hurt in week 2 or 3. They have a really bad offensive line, and then they put Justin Fields in that situation. So
that would not be good.
Right.
That would not be good at all.
Burrow, because you put him under like a leaky offensive line. His rookie season, he hasn't had a whole lot of time to study under, Andy Dalton. Well, Andy Dalton, I don't know. He's Andy Dalton.
He's not what he used to be.
Yeah, he's not what he was in like 2011, 2012, 2013.
Hello.
But I mean that's the nightmare scenario. I mean, you put him into that situation where all of a sudden he's cast into the starting job and he's under a bad offensive line, and especially like 3 or 4 weeks in, you're usually getting into like the meat of your schedule at that point. So that to me is the ultimate like oh shit moment where it could really all go poorly, especially if he were to get injured. And then, you talk about his future and all that. If it's a bad enough injury, if it's like a torn ACL or whatnot. So
let's hope he never does get put in that position where he gets hurt.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
I mean, that's,
we see how it is for Joe Burrow.
Right. And
he's even talking about it's hard for him to,
he's still not right. I mean, you're never right after an injury like that. I don't think in general, but especially when it's your rookie season and, you dominated in college and you were the guy. I just think it's
and he was doing pretty well. He was doing pretty well in his rookie year. And then obviously he just kept getting hit
for what they had, which was nothing. Yeah. I mean, it was him basically. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think the Bears are probably a below average team. And hopefully the first step is just making sure they have a solid offensive line for the future. And building that up first things first there, because we all know how important that is. And it's still understated, I think, in the NFL, especially how important it is to have a great offensive line and to stay healthy in that area too. I mean,
you saw with the Cowboys for many years, the reason why they won a lot of games was because of the offensive line.
Right. Yeah. And you saw last year with the Chiefs, how it affects when you lose 2 or 3 guys on that offensive line. So it makes all the difference in the world. Patrick Mahomes is not Patrick Mahomes without the offensive line. So it's like that for every team. So yeah, I think what intrigues me with this division is not necessarily who's going to win the division, but it's who's going to finish last. I think all 3 of these teams below the Packers are kind of it's for me, it's kind of a flip of the coin. I think the Vikings probably have the tiny advantage. I know we'll get to them in a second, but the Lions, I think they're going to be, I don't know. they're kind of.
We'll talk about the Lions when we get to the Lions. But yeah. I mean, one thing that we haven't talked about with Chicago before we move off of Chicago, we haven't even talked about their defense yet and how good that defense was and that kept them in games last season.
Yeah, they were like number 12 in the NFL. They were pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, they're pretty solid defense.
Khalil Mack was a monster, in my opinion.
That's not just your opinion, Kirby. That's fact.
He's always been a monster.
Yeah. I mean, he looked great. And
he looks like Francis Ngannou.
Is he still there? He's still there, right?
He's still there.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought he got traded, but that must have been my imagination. But yeah, I mean, Khalil Mack. Well, I think he's like the backbone of that defense, and he's just been incredible. And to Carlos's point, they've kept the Bears in games, and I feel like if they can improve that defense anymore, that is going to help the Bears because they got to stop. If the Bears can't produce on offense, they need the defense to stop the opposing team's offense to limit like damage control.
Yeah, but they can only do so much. They can only do so much because you saw it. They were keeping the Bears in games, but Mitchell Trubisky was just not performing. So eventually they just gave up. Like there was plenty of games where eventually they just said, fuck it. We're not going to do it anymore. Like we're sitting here battling and this guy's not doing shit. So
yeah, exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, so I think it's time to move on from the Chicago Bears over to the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to start this one off because I have a lot to say about the Minnesota Vikings.
And your former quarterback, Kirk Cousins.
I disown Kirk Cousins, but
you can't disown him. You can't.
Okay.
That's your guy.
Okay,
That's your quarterback, Kirby.
Okay. Yeah,
that was your quarterback.
Okay. So I'm going to start off by saying, how much longer is this experiment going to go on? Because the Vikings dump all this money into Kirk Cousins, and look what he has been able to accomplish. Next to nothing.
He finally won a playoff game.
One playoff game. One playoff game. Is one playoff game worth the $86 million Kirk was paid?
No.
God, no.
Okay.
No.
To my point, only one playoff win against the Saints to show for what the Vikings have done. I mean, granted,
it was.
I'm not putting all of this on Kirk Cousins, but still, they had a pretty bad defense. The O-line was decent. I mean, their defense sucked last year. They straight up
in the NFL.
I mean, when your head coach is saying this is the worst defense I've ever worked with, I mean, come on.
And their O-line, I mean, Kirk Cousins, if I remember correctly, he wasn't getting any protection on the line.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, how much longer are the Minnesota Vikings going to go on with this experiment? Because obviously, as of now, they paid way too much for Kirk Cousins. And I feel like if Kirk Cousins is going to continue to be an average to maybe
mediocre,
something, I mean, middle of the pack, because there's nothing extraordinary about the man. In my opinion.
Except that he gets all his stats in garbage time, and somehow that makes him a great quarterback. I've always said that when he was at Washington, he got his numbers on garbage time when the game was already out of reach, and the game was over, so the opposing defense didn't care at that point.
So 35 touchdowns. That's why.
So listen, how much longer are the Vikings gonna handle Kirk Cousins? Because if Kirk Cousins feels
I think they're at the rope's end, to be honest.
Well, listen to what I'm going to say here, because if Kirk Cousins feels in his mind that he's playing exceptional and it comes time for his contract to be extended and he wants even more money, if I were the Vikings and I looked at what he has done in his tenure in Minnesota, I'd say, go find another team.
I'd tell him to go kick rocks. I wouldn't resign Kirk Cousins unless he has an exceptional season this season.
Yeah.
And actually is winning games and they make a good playoff run. They get to, they win 2 playoffs. They get to the championship game. Then I'd consider resigning him.
Yeah, no, I would consider it. But as of right now, as of the season I saw last year and when his contract gets extended, if the Vikings are a middle of the pack to bottom of the barrel team, when Kirk goes to re-sign, I think he kicks rocks and he's going to have to find another team because the Vikings obviously overpaid for Kirk Cousins. And you look what happened in Washington. Washington let him go. And I feel like in the long run, that was better for Washington because what if Washington overpaid? I would not be surprised.
You would have
franchise tag him twice and paid him a hell of a lot of money 2 years in a row.
But that's better than signing him long term for that much.
But they still
paid him a shit ton of money.
Yeah, they basically put those 2 years in the trash.
Yeah,
they paid him for garbage time stats. That's what they paid him for.
So I mean, that's what I'm gonna start off with. I'll have Dan talk about their acquisitions and stuff and how the Vikings could potentially be better this year, but still. Kirk is going to kick rocks if the Vikings do not improve. And it's just fact because you look, one playoff win against the Saints to show through everything. That's $86 million, if I remember the dollar amount correctly. But that's just my take on Kirk Cousins for right now. But I'm sure once we get into the Vikings more, I'll have a little bit more to contribute. But you, Dan or Carlos, whoever wants to go next.
Well, and only one? How many playoff, touchdowns did he throw in Washington? How many playoff games they have in Washington? One?
One
Yeah,
against the Packers, and the Packers stomp on them.
So he had one playoff win when he got to Minnesota. He has one in Minnesota. He has two, and he's getting paid all that money. It's just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I will say there's been a lot of times where the Vikings have needed him to go down and tie the game or give them the lead, and if he makes a mistake or is now not able to get the job done, the game's over. And he does what Kirk Cousins does, and he chokes late in the game. So that's another thing too, is he has garbage time stats. Then he has other games where he can never seem to close the deal. So yeah, I want to talk about the defense. You guys mentioned it. I mean, they were 29th last year. It's just miserable.
I saved this one for you. Oh, no, never mind. Disregard that.
Disregard. Okay. They signed a couple guys who I think will help this defense. They get Patrick Peterson, cornerback. Who's older now. Obviously, I think he's been in the league about 11 years now.
He's been in the league for a while, yeah.
Yeah, I can't be for sure. And then they signed linebacker Nick Vigil. I think those guys will help the defense. I don't really see them making a huge difference. I thought they did a pretty good job drafting. They go out and get offensive lineman Christian Darrisaw.
I saved that one for you, Dan.
Yeah, that one that's pretty good. Christian Darrisaw did have some injury issues when he was at Tech, but I think when he did play, he made a pretty big difference. And definitely, as we talked about, Kirk Cousins needs all the help he can get with the offensive line. They went out and also drafted quarterback Kellen Mond, which obviously he's not going to play, likely not this year and maybe not start next year, but he could be the guy for the future for this team, just depending on what happens with Cousins. If Cousins comes out and has a good season, they're going to continue to stick with him long term. I think all it takes is one good year for Kirk Cousins, and they will commit because they're paying him a lot of money. I mean, you have to commit at that point. And then they take linebacker Chas Surratt from North Carolina, who I think is also a pretty solid pick. Of course, they're bringing back Jefferson and Adam Thielen.
Jefferson's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I had him on my fantasy team last year. Absolutely.
He's a stud.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, he's really good. I mean, he was great at LSU. So,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
A 5-yard route, and he takes it for 25, 30 yards. He's just insane.
And I think that they used to have Stephon Diggs also.
I've always
Kirk
been a
Cousins ran him
fan.
out of town.
Should have never left, man. That's a shame.
Anyways, yep.
I've always been a fan of the Vikings. I've always been a fan of the Vikings receiving core because they always help out. Like, I know Cousins is average, but still, I mean, you throw a good pass to either of these two.
They have 3 or 4 really good receivers. Yeah, and every year.
Yards after the catch is through the roof almost.
Yep, exactly. And that's what gives him his numbers too. I mean, if he had average receivers or, just above average receivers, you would see how bad he really is. I think in general for the Vikings, I don't really think the defense is going to be that much better. I think they could improve a little bit, but I don't see them making any big leaps and bounds this year. Like I said, I think they had a good draft, but I don't know if those guys are going to make an impact this year or next year. It's probably going to take some time. Their offense is pretty solid. I mean, if you just look at it on paper. So I think it all depends on Kirk Cousins. It's how we started the conversation and how we're going to end the conversation. It's all about, which Kirk Cousins shows up game to game. So I think the defense will be better, but they're going to be a young team in general. And I think they're going to find themselves at the bottom of that division for probably a couple years until they figure it out. Or I could be wrong, and Kirk Cousins and the Vikings could come out and shock people this year. So that would be very surprising if Kirk Cousins comes out and makes himself worth his contract this year and gets to the Super Bowl. That'd be insane.
They're not going to make the Super Bowl with this roster, not with the competition they'll have to go against.
No, and especially having the Packers in your own division.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're going to get in, it's going to have to be a Bears situation where they expanded the playoffs this past year, where they have an extra wild card team. That's how they have to get in if they are going to make it. So
yeah,
I think I think my ceiling for them this year is they're an 8-9 team, and I think I could see them go finish 6-11.
So pretty much the same as this year. The same that where they finished last year.
Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much everything Dan said I agree with. I really don't have any more points to make, except Kirk Cousins is an idiot also. I can't stand him. He's
such an idiot.
I can't. He's going to be the sole reason why they're going to play a week without any quarterbacks.
Did you see where he was like, he had this message where he was thanking the hospital and the hospital workers, and he said something like, I know if my family or I get COVID, you'll take care of us. And I was like, bruh.
Yeah, there's another way you can take care of yourself, buddy. Just get the shot. But I guess it's against his religion or something like that. Which I'm not bashing anybody on their religion, but I mean, come on, man. You know,
I'll do everything I can to protect myself. I even thought about putting up a bubble during meetings.
And when he motioned around to make sure people knew this kind of bubble, guys, the one that goes around you. I was just like, oh my God, what a dope. Let's move on to the Lions. I'd rather talk about the Lions now.
Yeah, there's nothing more that we need to really say about the Vikings.
Yeah, I think we cover the Vikings pretty good.
Except shout out to Angry Mike Zimmer because he has been pissed.
Okay.
Anyways.
Fighting in practice, right?
Did they get in a fight in practice?
I thought that was them, or was it?
I know the Giants did.
Yeah, I did see the Giants.
Yeah, the
Don't
Giants
get me started on them.
Well, we're gonna get started on them next episode.
Yeah,
but let's move on. Let's move on to the Lions.
All right. The Detroit Lions finished last year 5-11. They bring in the new head coach Dan Campbell. And I feel
Motor
like
City Dan Campbell.
Yes, of course you would say that.
Yeah, I knew it was coming.
Okay, so the Dan Campbell mentality, the Dan Campbell mentality here. Just stick with me here for a moment.
Do we have that here? Are we gonna bite people's kneecaps off?
So his mentality. They're gonna play tough. They're gonna play physical. If they get knocked down, they're gonna sit right back. They're going to stand right back up, but they're going to take a kneecap off. And then they're going to take another kneecap off after going 2 more times before getting knocked down again. And this mentality is all great. I like Dan Campbell's mentality, but I see the Lions getting knocked down, taking off a kneecap and not helping at all. And
yeah.
I mean, I just don't see it helping. I mean, I love the mentality. It's there. If they take a kneecap off and do great things and win the division, great, Dan. Great job. But still, the Lions have a lot of work to do. And it all starts with bringing in Jared Goff. I feel like that's exceptionally going to help things. But still, other than that, there is still a lot to work on. I mean, Jared Goff
let me start with that point.
Yeah,
hold on. Can we unpack this point really quick? Dan, go ahead.
Okay, listen, I'm not saying Jared Goff is the savior. I'm just saying it's a small piece to the big puzzle that Detroit is trying to piece together. And that's what I'm starting with. Dan Campbell's mentality. They're going to take off a kneecap, but I don't think taking off a kneecap will help them at all. I still feel like the Lions have a lot to work through, a lot of pieces to the puzzle, and I still find this team being last place in the division.
Well, I'll start with Dan Campbell, and then I'll go to Jared Goff.
And I'm not saying Jared Goff is gonna tear it up.
I'm trying to pedal back his statement.
He knows he's about to get ripped apart. He knows we're about to rip him apart.
Rip me apart. I don't care.
We're like sharks. We're like sharks in the water. We smell
helps. It. I did not say at all.
So I mean, we have to hit it now. We have to hit it now. You're trying to tell me that Jared Goff was a better option than Matthew Stafford?
Matt Stafford, yeah.
Well, Matthew Stafford had no help around him, in my opinion.
But it's any different with Jared Goff. Jared Goff, they literally just swapped teams.
Yeah.
So what is bringing Jared Goff? Jared Goff doesn't have help there either.
The only thing they might have is DeAndre Swift, and
maybe he'll do better this year than he did last year.
Yeah.
I mean, a new quarterback in a new system, who knows? Maybe plug and play and he does well. I'm just saying it helps.
Who's their best receiver? Rashad Perryman? Come on.
But
compared to Cooper Kupp, what he had in LA, like
yeah.
Come on, man. There's levels to this game.
Yeah.
I think Jared Goff's going to help, but still, I don't think the Lions have it. They have a lot of work that needs to be done.
Well, they had the worst. They had the worst defense last year. In the
yes,
NFL.
I know, and they will probably continue to have the worst defense.
They didn't really do anything in the offseason to rebuild.
I mean, come on, who wants to go play in Detroit? Like, they're not going to get any big major free agent signing, especially with the way the salary cap was this year.
Yeah.
True, no, that's true. It's probably going to take a couple years when they ever have a chance, but
it's going to be really funny to see Dan Campbell halfway through the season and seeing what his mentality is like when they're 0-10 or something like that.
Like, I just don't think that coaching style, while it is entertaining, doesn't work in today's NFL. This isn't 30 or 40 years ago. Like, the tough guy sort of crazy mentality that a lot of coaches had, like, in the 80s and 90s, like, was fine back then, and, like, players responded to it well. Today's players just won't. I mean, they're not going to buy. I just feel like players aren't going to buy into that. And it's going to start off okay, but then the players are going to start not taking him seriously with what he says, especially if he keeps up the bite off kneecaps nonsense. I don't think that kind of style lasts long in today's NFL, but 25, 30, 40 years ago, yes, but not now. It's just funny that, like, they are the definition of a rebuild. I mean, they're going to finish last in this division. They're going to probably be one of the worst teams in the NFC.
They're always in a rebuild, though. When are they not rebuilding?
I mean,
true.
Can I make a stretch and say this? Can I make a stretch and say,
please make a stretch? I'd love to hear it.
I feel like the brown paper bags are coming off the Cleveland Browns and getting tossed over to Detroit.
Well, Detroit never really lost them. I mean,
they were the original paper bag team.
Yeah,
remember they were the first ones to go.
Yeah, and the Browns are just giving all their paper bags to Detroit because I don't think they're gonna have.
We'll talk about the Browns a little later, but
I mean, still, I mean, there's not much to say besides. I mean, who knows? Who knows what can happen?
I think they're a 4-win team. I really do.
They could be a 3-win team in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. Look, I think Penei Sewell is a great pick. I think he's going to be a stud in the NFL. But one guy is not going to make that much of a difference, and especially
didn't they draft the Ohio State kid? That cornerback.
Oh,
like
yeah.
2 years ago?
How many years ago?
Was it Ward? Is it Ward?
Derek Ward?
Derek? No. Keep going. I'll look it up real quick.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's anything much to say. I think I don't know. I wouldn't even say they're really chipping away at getting better. I think they're taking minuscule steps to get better. And I just don't think Dan Campbell's the right answer as head coach. He is entertaining, and, like, it is funny to hear some of the stuff he says, and, like, wow, this guy is unhinged. But that's not going to work in a locker room of football players today's NFL players. They're not going to respond well to that sort of tongue lashing, if you will, for lack of a better term.
The Lions are such a laughing stock that we really don't have much to say. It's like a waste of breath almost.
Yeah, and I'm really worried.
I'm sorry. It was Jeff Okudah.
Oh yeah, Jeff Okudah.
Okay.
Okudah. It wasn't a Ward. My bad.
Oh, you're good, man. You're good. We forgive you.
But
I have a feeling Jared Goff's it's going to be a similar situation to Matt Stafford, except he's not going to play as well when he's healthy. I feel like he's just going to battle injuries the rest during his time with the Lions, however long it is, because he's going to get hit a lot. I mean, that offensive line is not good. They don't really have any receivers. They don't have much of a running game. It's just not going to be very good in general for them, for him, I don't think, for his health.
I think we touched on it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's nothing more to say. I mean, I think we're all in agreement then for the NFC North. It's going to be the Packers are going to win it. And then pretty much it's going to be a battle for who the hell wants to be the next best team. And whoever the next best team is, they're not going to have a winning record probably. So it'll be an easy, streamline for the Packers to make the playoffs.
Agreed. I definitely agree.
Yeah, I agree too. Once again, the three-man booth, Dan Dempsky and Carlos Martinez joining me as we just recap the NFC North. We'll take a quick break, and when we return, we talk about the AFC North right here on the Kirby on Sports podcast. For sports fans living in condominium and homeowners associations, as well as business professionals, when you need a reserve study, PM Plus Reserves has been in business since 1990. Their studies are accurate and easy to understand. Check them out when your association needs a study. www.pmplusreserves.com. You can also contact them at 703-803-8436. Once again, www.pmplusreserves.com. Is it finally time to upgrade your home's interior? How about with an authentic farm table made locally from recycled barnwood? Shenandoah Primitives, based right here in Winchester, Virginia, makes farm tables, benches, tables, coffee tables, and a long list of other items for your home decorating needs. At Shenandoah Primitives, function and style are combined for great furniture that will last generations. If you're interested in combining the industrial look of metal with wood, or considering something incredibly unique with a live edge, Shenandoah Primitives turns those ideas into reality. Thinking about a mirror, wine rack, or other accent piece for your home, Shenandoah Primitives can assist with that as well. As a local small business, Shenandoah Primitives is happy to work with each client for a custom design or schedule an appointment to come out and view current inventory. Local, high-quality, handmade items can be found at Shenandoah Primitives. Find us on Facebook and Instagram or visit us at www.shenandoahprimitives.com. Once again, that's www.shenandoahprimitives.com.
Hey, sports fans. Thank you for listening to and supporting the Kirby on Sports podcast with founder and host Josh Kirby, along with lead contributor Dan Dempsky. Like, subscribe, and give them a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcast from. My name is Dr. Dave Miles, founder of Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation. Our company helps leaders build engaged and productive teams. Exclusively for listeners of the Kirby on Sports podcast, you can take an opportunity to discover your primary communication style and learn more about effective communication with others. Text Kirby to 757-903-0743 for your free copy of the Working From Home Communication Assessment, where you'll learn your primary communication style, how to better communicate with others not like you, and tips on working remotely based on your personal communication style. 10 minutes, tons of resources. Learn about yourself and your team. Again, text Kirby to 757-903-0743 for your free assessment report today. I'm Dr. Dave Miles, founder of Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, where we help you and your team be more engaged and productive by understanding each other better. Back to you, Josh.
All right. Thank you once again to all of our sponsors. Welcome back to the three-man booth here on the Kirby on Sports podcast. Dan Dempsky, our co-host and lead contributor, and the Swiss Army knife, Carlos Martinez. We are breaking down the AFC North. This division is very interesting, so I'm looking forward to talking about this AFC North.
And we're finally hitting one of our contributors' favorite teams.
Yeah, and we'll get your thoughts on that. But first and foremost, the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's a lot to be talked about this Steelers team. I'll start with you, Carlos. The 12-4 Pittsburgh Steelers last season.
I mean, I'm not expecting too much from them this season, to be completely honest. I mean, obviously they signed your favorite quarterback, Dwayne Haskins.
No, don't put
yes.
Do not say that.
Favorite quarterback.
Kirby, you idolize that man. He went to the adult
Dwayne
ballet.
Haskins was a bust.
You were telling me
he was worse than Jamarcus Russell.
You were talking about how great he was going to be.
Dwayne Haskins was worse than Jamarcus Russell.
We can't say that.
Yes, I can. I will.
You cannot say that. You can't
will.
say that. You
Yes.
can't say that. Jamarcus Russell literally would not watch game tape. At least Dwayne Haskins did.
At least, I mean, did Jamarcus Russell go out and party after a loss?
Yes.
After a
Did
loss?
you see how overweight Jamarcus Russell got? At least Dwayne Haskins did put in some work.
Yeah, put him some work. Oh, my gosh. Don't get me started on
It's okay. He's your favorite quarterback. You don't have to lie. It's okay, Kirby. I know you're trying to keep up appearances. I know you're trying. I know you're trying your best.
For the record,
but
Dwayne Haskins is not my favorite.
Strike everything that Kirby just says. Strike it from the goddamn record because it's not true. Because he was literally sitting there praising him after the Hall of Fame game, being like, "Oh, he actually looked good. Oh my god,
I remember."
He's actually the Hall of Fame game. I said he played 2 series.
And you say he looked great because he had 1 touchdown pass.
Yeah. Don't lie. Kirby, you don't got to lie. It's okay.
It's okay.
I'm here
for the record.
Kirby.
You're on the
No. For your listeners to know. No. He's your quarterback. He's your guy. It's okay. Kirby, I'm here to hold you accountable, all right? And he's your guy. It's fine.
No, he isn't.
It's okay. Anyways, moving on.
Dwayne Haskins is not my guy.
He's your guy. It's okay.
No, he's Are we just gonna keep going around and around in a circle?
I mean, just accept it, Kirby. Stop lying to the people. Stop lying.
They want,
See, this is what Dallas Cowboys fans give you. They feed you negative energy.
Excuse me. The Cowboys aren't even in the conversation right now. We didn't pick him, okay? We knew that he was not our quarterback. He's your quarterback.
Not anymore. He's Pittsburgh's problem.
Dan, clip this and put this on the internet. He was your quarterback.
You got it.
No,
I wish I had a timestamp. Damn.
Oh, gosh.
I got to start timing this thing.
Oh, my God.
He was your quarterback.
So are we going to talk about Dwayne Haskins the rest of
No. I'm moving off of Dwayne Haskins.
Are we going to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers?
We're going to talk about the Steelers and the fact that Dwayne Haskins was your quarterback. And he still is your quarterback. It's okay.
Oh, my God.
You want it back. I know you do. It's okay.
There's literally nothing getting around this. Unbelievable.
No, not really. But anyways, we can talk about Big Ben, and the fact that he's, coming back and he took like massive pay cut, didn't he?
Yeah. I think he did that because he wanted to stay in Pittsburgh. Of course he wants to stay in Pittsburgh. I realistically couldn't see Big Ben going to another team. And
no other team would sign him. I mean, we saw what happened at the end of last season. I mean, he started out the season kind of good. And then by the end, like he just couldn't throw anything.
Yeah.
His
like Drew Brees situation.
He wants to finish his career there.
I mean, he won 2 Super Bowls. He took them to 3 Super Bowls, won 2. I mean, if there's anybody that kind of deserves to finish out a team, it was Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
He's given so much to that team. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So like to me, I mean, I don't see this team doing much, to be honest. I feel like they still have a bunch of offensive line problems. They drafted Najee Harris, but I mean, like, what can he do? I mean, they didn't have an offensive line last year. And they didn't do anything really to fix it. So it's like, what really is Najee Harris going to do, in this scenario?
Listen, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And Dwayne Haskins, your favorite quarterback.
I swear.
We have to put that caveat in there.
No.
Every time we talk about the Steelers, I'm going to bring it up. All season, Kirby. This is going to be all year.
No. So the Pittsburgh Steelers. Good, you didn't say it, but anyways.
I missed it. I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention.
Okay. I'm gonna say this for the
That Dwayne Haskins is your favorite quarterback.
The Pittsburgh Steelers, they were a 12-4 team last year.
When do I get to talk?
They got exposed. They started the season 11-0. Obviously, you see Washington come in and beat them on Monday night.
I know, that's what I was waiting for. I was waiting for him to bring it up.
Listen.
No, shout out, because they did it. They beat the undefeated Pittsburgh Steelers on a Wednesday night of all
No, it was a Monday night.
After the Ravens COVID ruined everything.
So, anyways, the Steelers were an 11-0 team, undefeated going into that Washington game. After that Washington game, it was all downhill, and they got exposed. They did not look like an undefeated team going in 11 games into the season.
Well, that's when the Washington defense really
they really came
out. That's when they really came after.
It's about Pittsburgh getting exposed.
No. I mean, I want to give credit where credit is due. The Washington defense, that was their coming out party because they put the shellacking on them.
Yeah. And that's when Big Ben, he really that game really screwed him up. Like he was never the rest of the season he was never the same, and you could see him he was just uncomfortable and off kilter with all of his passes and his receivers and the timing of the routes. The timing just wasn't there after that game for whatever reason, especially in that playoff game against Cleveland where they just got absolutely destroyed. Where I think they were down 28-0 at one point.
That was the icing on the cake. Watching the Steelers go out of the Browns winning a playoff game.
It was insane as a Ravens fan to watch that because I didn't know what to think because on one hand I'm like the Steelers are getting crushed. This is great, but then I'm a little worried about the Browns now for the future because they are. We're gonna get to them. Yeah, we're gonna get to them.
The Steelers were exposed for the fakes they were. I believe Carlos used that term first, so give credit where credit is due. But they did not. I mean, even when they were going on that undefeated streak, they weren't really dominating. If I remember correctly.
Well, I mean, think about it. The Cowboys almost beat him with a freaking third-string quarterback. We didn't even have Andy Dalton in that game. We had
the Ravens almost beat him with
freaking Trace McSorley.
JMU, baby.
Yeah, but
he was on the last episode of Hard Knocks.
Ben DiNucci. What a guy. Yeah, they barely beat in week 12, they barely beat the Ravens who had 50 guys out with COVID. They barely won that game. I was pissed about that one. Third-string quarterback. Because
then Trace got hurt then in that game, right?
And then I can't even remember who finished the game. I think it was it must have been Huntley who came in and finished the game.
Oh,
yeah, Brett
God, that's gonna bother me.
He was the third-string quarterback, so yeah. I think that was the game that started the downturn, and then the Washington game was the beginning of the nail in the coffin for their season. Because of course Washington played them the week after that. So, but let me just say in general about the Steelers, their defense last year was just dominating. I mean, they were the third best.
No. So RG3 was the backup, and then Trace McSorley.
That's right, and he was the third string. Right.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the end of the season last year when I think, by that point, RG3 and McSorley had
RG3 got injured, didn't he?
Yeah.
Pulled a groin or a hammy or something.
Yeah,
it's RG3. He's always hurt.
Something that your team did to him.
Yeah, you started it.
You guys ruined RG3. Just know that.
Hi, I'm Josh, and you can listen to me get bullied by Dan and Carlos.
You're welcome.
So
again, Dwayne Haskins is your favorite quarterback, so you deserve it.
Hey, how are you? Thanks
go
for the kind words.
They didn't. They only required one guy in free agency, which BJ Finney. I don't even know who that is. I didn't get a chance to look him up.
The Steelers did.
Yeah, they only had one free agency signing, which I thought was really
because they re-signed Juju to a 1-year deal.
Right.
He's got to stop those dumb TikTok dances because that obviously was not helping.
That was also a big key to why they struggled because. He was dancing on their logos and they were losing and they said stop and he kept doing it anyway. Yeah, I mentioned that, Najee Harris, I think he's a great pick, but you made a really good point, Carlos. I mean, this offensive line was a scrap heap last year, especially they had injuries, they had guys sliding in and out. They didn't have any consistency, and it was part of the reason why they didn't have any running game, because James Conner, first of all, they were behind in several games because they had to throw it a lot, especially in that playoff game. I think Big Ben threw it like 70 times because, of course, they got behind so early on in the game. And that was another reason why I think they struggled late in the season, because they were behind. They had to throw the ball a lot. They had a patchwork offensive line. The defense kept them in games for the most part. I think even the playoff game, I mean, they had like 2 pick sixes that Big Ben threw early on in the game. And then, it was 28-0 at halftime or whatever the score was. So the game was pretty much over at that point. I think the defense is going to be good again this year. I don't think they're going to have any issues on that side of the ball, but there's a lot of questions on offense, especially like, is Big Ben done? Something was disconnected, and I mean, he was just missing throws that he shouldn't miss. I mean, he had guys wide open so many times, and he has some of the best receivers in the NFL as well. I mean, obviously Juju, what a fantastic receiver he is. Yeah. Claypool was early on in the year. I mean, he was unbeatable. So, I think that's just the big question this year for them is Big Ben apparently slimmed down. I saw a picture of him and I thought, I mean, he's not as big as he was, but I wouldn't call it slim. I mean, he lost some weight,
slim
sure.
thick.
Exactly, slim.
Realistically, could this be Big Ben's final year in the league?
Probably.
Sure.
I think he's kind of a placeholder right now. I mean, the problem is with the Mike Tomlin team, I don't think they're ever going to get in a position where they're going to get like a high draft pick.
Right.
So like, I don't know if they'll ever replace. I was about to say Dwayne Haskins. I don't think they're ever going to replace Big Ben with like a
draft pick or something,
like a top tier quarterback draft, like the way Big Ben was like a top quarterback draft pick. I don't think they'll ever drop that far, because we saw even when Big Ben got hurt, they still posted up an 8-8 season, with Mason Rudolph at quarterback. And of course that was.
And who was the other guy? Duck Hodges, right?
Duck Hodges.
Oh, he was terrible. He was terrible, and they still were like they
still won some games with him.
Yeah, I mean they didn't miss the playoffs by that much.
They don't have to worry about Duck because now they got Dwayne Haskins, Kirby's favorite quarterback, but
who is even worse. So
we'll go.
But no, the other thing, but back to the offensive line point,
right?
The other thing is like Marquise Pouncey, their longtime center, retired this year,
right?
And they didn't do anything to really like replace him in the draft or in free agent. When we did our mock draft, I had them taking Landon Collins from Alabama because I thought he was I thought he would fit perfectly in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, they of course they take Najee Harris in the first round, and they drafted 2 straight offensive linemen, a guy from Illinois and a guy from Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
But those are 3rd and 4th round picks. Those guys aren't going to be, probably aren't going to start straight off. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of questions with that offensive line, and that's really where it all starts. And we've seen it throughout the league. We talked about it in the NFC, with was it the Packers where they had issues with the offensive? I can't remember now.
No, it was Chicago.
Chicago, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like that with every team. I mean, if you have a couple veteran guys, and most offensive lines have, those especially that one guy who's an anchor, who's an older player, and some sort of young guy. If the offensive line stays healthy, you're going to be pretty solid on offense. You're going to at least have a chance to win. And it just seemed like at times last year, like Pittsburgh they couldn't help themselves at all on offense, and they should have been way better, especially late in the season. I mean, they have such great receivers, so they're an interesting team to watch for. Their defense is going to give them a chance to win, but in this division, it's just this is the last comment I'd made on these notes. It's just going to be hard for any team to dominate this division. I think it's going to come down to the final couple games. And I can see the Steelers kind of being in the thick of things. I don't think they're going to struggle as much as you said, Carlos, but the way that offensive line looks, they might, they really might struggle. And with the Ravens and Browns, being right there, on each other's heels. This is just going to be a tough division to win.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, you're in the division with two killer teams right now with the Ravens and the Browns, who are young and on the up and up, especially, and of course, again, with the Browns, who have completely, they really upgraded on defense, so like, for me, if Pittsburgh's going to make it into the playoffs, they're going to be one of the few third place teams I think they're going to finish in third. Because I think it's going to really be a battle between the Ravens and the Browns for first and second.
I definitely agree with that. Definitely.
And
I think that's all I have to say about Pittsburgh. I don't know.
It's going to be last.
Yeah. They're still trying to figure out what they're doing for.
All right. Moving on. We're getting to co-host and league contributor Dan Dempsky's Baltimore Ravens. So Dan, I will turn this segment mostly over to you because I know you follow this team intently and you have probably a lot to say. So let's hear it.
So for the Ravens, of course, it starts with Lamar, but also have to look at the defense. Second in the league last year. They were phenomenal. Had a great secondary, which I thought their secondary last year really improved from where they had been. And for the most part last year, they stayed pretty healthy until later in the season. So they were able to really, really dominate, I think, in that area last year. And obviously, if you're second in the league in defense, it's a pretty good situation. The offense was seventh in the league last year. The number one rushing team, obviously. They had three guys, obviously with Lamar Jackson, J.K. Dobbins, and Gus Edwards. They could pretty much do what they wanted running the football. And it's interesting, they were last in the NFL in passing, but they attempted a lot less passes than the team that was ahead of them. I think they threw 50 less passes than the team that was 31st in the league. So that's an interesting stat. They don't, they're not a team. Lamar's not a quarterback right now that's going to throw it 35, 40, 50 times a game. That's just not his game. I think it's got to improve and go more to that level because teams are going to start figuring out the run. Their offensive line had some issues, especially in the playoffs. They had some guys shuffled in and out, and you really saw, how they struggled in the AFC divisional game. Divisional game. I think for them, the key thing, again, it's similar to Pittsburgh and every other team in the league. Their offensive line has to stay healthy, and there's a cohesiveness, I think, that's built when you have, a group of guys who stay healthy the entire season and they're able to, work together and figure out what each other's strengths are too. That's a huge thing with the offensive line, is figuring out, every player has different strengths and stuff. So, they drafted, signed Kevin Zeitler, who I think will help the offensive line a little bit. He's a pretty decent player. Of course, they drafted Rashad Bateman. I'm very excited to watch him. A great receiver out of Minnesota.
That was a great pick.
Yeah, he's injured now, and he had minor surgery, so that is one negative thing. He's going to be out probably until late September, which I'm fine with. It's a minor injury, but let him rest, let him, heal up completely, because I hate when they rush players back, especially when they're young guys, and they kind of re-aggravate or re-injure something. So they also drafted Tylan Wallace from Oklahoma. He could be a guy who could be a good fourth receiver, maybe a guy that sort of comes off the bench and can make a couple plays. I think they're a really solid team across the board. I think one thing they have to focus on is playbook wise. I think in the playoffs, one thing they get away from is sort of doing more of the creative running that they did in the regular season. They seem to want Lamar to throw too much, and that's not his first couple seasons in the league. That's just not his game. I think he can get to that point. I don't think he's there yet. I hope this year we start to see a little bit more development especially with the deep passes. I'm not saying he can't throw the ball, because I think that's a ridiculous statement when people say that. He's not a traditional quarterback. He's not going to, he's, like I say, he's not going to throw it 40, 50 times a game. So you have to respect that he can run it very well, and he doesn't have to throw it as well as, as other quarterbacks in the league. And then another note I had is using the weapons around him, because now, of course, he has Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews, one of the best tight ends in the NFL. He was pretty big last year for them. I think he's going to be a big part of the playbook this year. And then again, running the football, J.K. Dobbins, I'm really excited to see him again in his second season. So I think it's going to be a pretty solid season for the Ravens. I think it's going to be really fun to watch them battle the Browns, and I think Pittsburgh as well. Again this year, just like it was last year. I mean, when you have three teams that finish 1, 2, 3, and they all have at least 11 wins, that's a really tight competitive division. And I know we talked about the NFC West being, one of the most competitive divisions, but I really believe it's the AFC North. And I don't think you can really sleep on any of these teams, to be honest. Except maybe Cincinnati, because I think they're a long way from being at the level that the Ravens and Browns are. But I think I pretty much covered everything I wanted to say. They've had some injuries in the preseason, which I think is a little concerning. They've had some guys go down on defense. Nothing serious, just, you're going to have groin pulls and aches and pains here and there in the preseason, especially because, remember, guys, last year we didn't even get a preseason. We didn't get a training camp. So these guys this is the first time in 2 years these guys have done this. And for rookies and younger guys, they haven't done it yet. So you're going to see some guys get bumped up along or bumped and bruised along the way. So hopefully it doesn't affect them long term, though. But I think that's all I got.
Well, I agree with what you say. I feel like the Ravens could be a team if they make that next step. They could potentially be a first place team. I could 100% see that happen. I want to get like last year, I know the critics were talking about Lamar Jackson and how his quarterbacking style is not unique or whatnot. I mean, Lamar Jackson is a really great quarterback. And if he is more of a running quarterback, rushing for 80, 90 yards a game and winning games that way, if it works, then keep doing it. The only thing I will say, though, make sure you're protecting yourself and make sure you're not overrunning it. And
he does a pretty good job. Yeah.
I mean,
that is a concerning thing, though. Definitely.
Yes, absolutely. But I mean, Lamar Jackson, if he develops as a thrower, I'm not saying he's going to throw more, but still, put the playbook around where Jackson is more comfortable and start slowly but surely putting in design pass plays, because you have a lot of weapons. In my opinion, you have a lot of weapons that you have at your disposal, and this is a great way to learn preseason, training camp, so on and so forth.
Right.
And it will help you become a passing quarterback. But I'm not saying just straight up refuse to run the ball and just throw it all the time. I'm just saying, if you're comfortable running the football and you're successful doing it and you're doing it safely, then continue to do it. I mean, what's stopping you? It's going to be Lamar Jackson is such a great quarterback, and I feel like if they sprinkle in the pass plays with all these weapons around him, they're going to do even better, in my opinion.
And he's an MVP. So, I mean,
he is. Absolutely.
That's the other thing is people say he can't play quarterback. And I'm like,
but he's an MVP.
Actually, he threw 36 touchdowns and threw for 3,000 yards. And then in the same year running the ball, he ran for 7 touchdowns. So, took a little bit of a step back last year, but those numbers he had in that MVP season those are impossible to repeat, So, I think people's expectations sometimes are a little unrealistic. Everybody expects those, Madden rookie mode type numbers. You're not going to see that. It's just not realistic.
They're expecting Patrick Mahomes type numbers, but Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are two totally different quarterbacks. They play differently. So it's like, I mean, we've said this for a long time, like Lamar Jackson just you just got to play to his strengths. And right now he's developing as a passer. So like, you just got to give him time because like he wasn't necessarily the most crisp passer in college, you know.
No,
and
he
he's
wasn't.
not the most crisp passer now, but like he's working on it, you know, and you see year by year. And last year, I kind of, you know, I think we're going to have to put an asterisk last year because he did get COVID and it was a COVID year. So it was really strange. And
they had a
still
lot
made
of
the playoffs. Yeah. And they still made the playoffs.
Yeah.
He did get COVID again, but he's been vaccinated though, right?
Well,
if I remember correctly,
talk to the team doctor about it. I was like, well, that's good because if he talks to the team doctor will set him straight. Now, I mean, if he gets the shot, he'll have the best immune system in the NFL because he's had it twice, and he'll have the shot. So,
but yeah, I mean, I don't know. To me, this Ravens team is. It's like you said, if they can stay consistent on the play calling for Lamar, especially later on in the season, this team can, you know, they've proved it. They can do great things. You know, they've been 14-2. They made the playoffs last year. They beat the Titans last year, you know,
which was incredible. It was huge because the season before the Titans beat them, and in the regular season, if I remember correctly, Derrick Henry walked off in overtime. And for the Ravens to go back to Tennessee and beat them in the playoffs, that was just motivation going into the next game. And
would you say that
it was great?
Would you say that this is a make or break year for this whole? I don't want to call it an experiment, but do you think like, you know, Harbaugh's kind of on the hot seat if they don't really succeed, like get to at least, you know, I don't know, the conference championship?
That's so tough. I mean, I don't necessarily think so. I think they probably need to win at least 2 playoff games. Which I guess if you win the wild card and if you're a wild card team or whatnot, and you win the divisional round, then you're in the championship.
But then if you start from the divisional, then you're in the Super Bowl.
Then you're in the Super Bowl, right?
I feel like Harbaugh's proven himself I can't picture Harbaugh on the hot seat unless the Ravens do something drastic and win only like 3 or 4 games.
I mean, he's one of the most winningest coaches in the active coaches in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I mean, he and Mike Tomlin Mike Tomlin obviously has had a couple more years in coaching than him. But they're pretty close. And I think they're both about the same amount of respect as far as, you know, the top tier head coaches in the NFL. So I don't necessarily think that he'll be on the hot seat. Now, will people question if they falter in the playoffs again? Sure. I think it's natural to, because I mean, this is Lamar's 4th season. You know, and obviously he's 2 years removed. Well, yeah, he'll be 2 years removed from his MVP season. So questions will be asked like, hey, why is there no consistency? But, no, I think he's proven himself as a head coach. You know, he won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco as quarterback. So now Joe Flacco
had a great defense that year.
But in the playoffs, Joe Flacco was like a different man. Like it was, I mean, he tied Joe Montana's record for touchdown to interception in the playoffs, which it was kind of like a one playoff kind of deal, and you know they gave him all that money, and you know the rest is history. But hey, we got Lamar Jackson out of it, so I'm not that mad. But I think he has proven himself as a head coach, and I don't really think he's on the hot seat. Plus, this division's really good. If the Browns win the division, I wouldn't be shocked. I think the Browns are a really good football team. And obviously, if you're a wild card team, you usually have a tougher road. I mean, how many wild card teams have won the Super Bowl? I don't really. What has there been? One maybe in NFL?
No, there's been a few.
Okay.
Yeah, the Buccaneers last season, they started in the wild card.
They started in the wild card. I remember that.
But also last year was different because even though they were on the road, it wasn't really home field advantage at any of the stadiums that they went to.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I know, like Tampa Bay's done it. I know the Giants have done it.
The Giants did it in 11.
Yeah, the Giants did it. I think the Ravens did it when they won the Super Bowl. They started in the wild card. They had a home playoff game, but they still won it from the wild card.
Right.
So, I mean, it can be done. So even if the Ravens are in the wild card, now obviously it'll be different this season because fans will be back. But
Yeah, that's going to be huge too. Yeah,
Mhm.
there's been 6 who won the Super Bowl. I don't know how current that is.
Yeah,
I
but
would say that's
I
pretty
mean,
accurate, but
I agree with all of your points there. This division is just so, for lack of a better term, up in the air between the Steelers, Ravens, and Browns, who will get.
I really don't think the Steelers are in the conversation. I don't. I think it's a 2-horse race between the Ravens and the Browns. I think those are the 2 teams, and then I think Pittsburgh will pose some challenges, but I don't really think they're really competing for first place or second place. I'm telling you, I think they're the 3rd place team. I think they'll like I said, I think there'll be a thorn in the side of the Browns and the Ravens, but I think ultimately the Ravens and the Browns will handle them.
I think that's fair. I think especially if you're looking at, future star-studded teams, and especially looking at this division, I think the Ravens and Browns are fairly young teams, and they also have pretty bright futures, and Pittsburgh's kind of up in the air, especially on offense, especially at the quarterback position, because Big Ben's, I think he's definitely going to be gone after this year. He's not a young feller anymore. So and you started to see sort of the wear and tear at the end of last year. So
Yep.
And I don't think Dwayne Haskins, sorry, Josh, but I don't think Dwayne Haskins is the answer.
Yeah, did you see his stat line in the Hall of Fame game? They threw up his stat line when he came in.
To be honest, I watched a little bit of that, but
Weren't we doing a podcast that day? I'm positive we were recording. So I don't think we were really I wasn't paying attention to that game. It's the goddamn Hall of Fame game.
It's the preseason. Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't paying attention, but still,
you were.
When Haskins,
you were.
Yeah, okay. But when Haskins came in,
he's talking about Haskins. He's sitting there saying it's not his favorite quarterback, but he's talking about Haskins.
No, I'm talking about the stats they threw up. I was like, they wasted that part of the graphics to throw up his stats: 3 and 10, 175 pass yards per game, 12 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. I was like, wow.
Man, he won't even talk about his boy Ryan Fitzpatrick this much. Dang.
I know, right? He's still talking about I mean, God, man.
All right. Before we move on, it is time to bring you the keyword as mentioned at the very beginning of this podcast. We're partnering up with MPT Now MPT Now in the MPT Now transformation room in order to bring you either 1 month of group training in person or virtual. The key word is transformation. So what you have to do is you have to like the Kirby on Sports podcast on Facebook. Then you have to go like MPT Now transformation room. Once again, it's not MPT Now. There's also an MPT Now Productions. That is not it either. It's MPT Now Transformation Room. Once you like our page in MPT Now Transformation Room, the MPT Now Transformation Room Facebook page will have a post with our episode linked down below. You have to comment the keyword transformation, and then you are entered to win a free month of group training, either in person or virtually. The winner will be announced September 25th at MPT Now in MPT Now Transformation Room's grand opening, so you don't want to miss it. Once again, the keyword is transformation for 1 free month of group training in person or virtually. So we will post that on social media as well when it comes out, the post where you have to comment under, but that's going to be under MPT Now Transformation Room. So make sure you like both our Facebook pages and be on the lookout for that post so you can comment this keyword. Now back to the podcast. All righty, we are back. Now we will be taking a look at the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns.
Brownies.
The Brownies. Yes, the Brownies. I could use a brownie right now, actually.
I could too.
Yeah, so.
Got some fudge here.
I mean, the Browns.
Oh,
not
Browns,
that kind of fudge.
Can I just say?
I just got cookies.
There it is. There it is.
Can I just say the Browns had a really remarkable season last season?
100%.
You can say
100%.
Yeah. It was great to see the Browns go from a laughing stock to a really good team who made it to the second round of the playoffs against Kansas.
I mean, they were so close to beating Kansas City, too.
It was incredible.
Right.
It was incredible. I mean, in this team, I think they're going to do just as well. Like Carlos said, it's going to be a horse race between the Ravens and the Browns this season.
Carlos,
Yeah.
we're starting with you.
Go
I
ahead,
guess.
Carlos.
Yeah, I mean, what they did last year was incredible, and the fact that they did it all without Odell Beckham Jr. and and now they're getting him back, and they grew as a team because they lost him. Like, a lot of more players had to step up. Now, I'm not saying Odell Beckham Jr. is like this. Like, to me, he hasn't really been the same like impactful player as he was when he was with the Giants, ever since he came to Cleveland. But I mean, it's just another weapon for Baker Mayfield to use. They did a lot defensively, and I feel like this is really going to be a huge year for Baker Mayfield, in my opinion. I feel like this is really going to show where he is in his development. Obviously, you had one great year last year, and now you're coming into this year where you have all your weapons back. Your defense is great. You have a solid coach. This is the first time I think he's ever going to come into the season with the same coaching staff that he did the season prior.
Yeah.
I mean, just everything just looks great for Cleveland right now. And I mean, I can't really find any flaws with this team, to be honest. I think they built this team correctly, and I think that they're up there with the Chiefs and the Bills to compete for the Super Bowl this year.
No, I definitely agree. And they got better on defense in free agency. They signed, cornerback Troy Hill, linebacker Anthony Walker, and I think their best signing on defense is Malik Jackson. So, and their first round pick, they go out and draft, Greg Newsome from Northwestern, defensive back, and he's a solid pick too.
Didn't they also get Jadeveon Clowney?
I was about to say that too. They also signed Jadeveon Clowney.
And then you already have
that defense was 21st last year, so I mean they should be better. So, and we know how many weapons that Baker has on offense.
It looks like to me the Browns,
there he is,
after this successful season, went out and got even more talent to build on what they had last season to get better and better. And I feel like, once again, I'll go back to the two-man horse race between the Ravens and the Browns. I feel like that's going to help them in this horse race get even better and stronger and more powerful. And yes, they have Odell Beckham back, so
they were better without him. And when he got hurt, they were actually better on offense without him. I thought.
I feel like him getting hurt kind of actually helped this team because, again,
together.
They weren't relying on Odell. Then everybody else had to step up. So now everybody, there's more trust in the team where it's like, we don't have to always pass it to Odell. All these guys can be trusted. They can all, and I mean, like I said, Odell hasn't been the same impactful player anyway since he left New York. So
I think he's overrated anyway, to be honest.
I do too. I think he made that one incredible catch against my Dallas Cowboys. And
Cowboys.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be Stephen A. Smith impression, but it wasn't good. But yeah.
We'll work on it. It's all
also,
right.
He's not a Dallas Cowboys fan. He makes fun of them often.
I know.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. But I mean, like, also, like, they have Myles Garrett, and,
right.
From what I'm hearing about, what was his name? Anthony Walker. Like, I'm hearing like he was like a key, like, because he came from Indianapolis, correct?
I believe so. Let me double
He's from
check.
Indianapolis.
Double check.
From what I hear is like they love him there in Cleveland, and that like Indianapolis loved him too. But if this is the same guy we're talking about,
let me throw this question out there. because this is one of the questions I had planned to answer with the Browns. Realistically, how many years do you...
Dwayne Haskins? Oh.
No, Dan. No more Dwayne Haskins. We're on the Browns. Come on now. Okay, so how many years realistically do you think, if the Browns keep trending in this direction, how many years do you think it will take them to make it to a Super Bowl?
I mean, they can make it this year. They really could.
Do
they
we
have
think
the
it's
team
possible
to do it.
this year? To
It's
make
possible
it to the
this year
Super
for
Bowl?
sure.
They have the roster right now to go to the Super Bowl.
They've built their team for this, and they're a young team too. So they have plenty of. They have at least, what would you say, a 5-6 year window from right now to, they have the right coaching staff. I feel like, and Kevin Stefanski's what he did to really organize that mess of a franchise in one season is incredible. And that's why he won Coach of the Year.
Can I also remind you, when the Browns beat the Steelers, Kevin Stefanski was sitting on his couch with COVID?
Was that the playoff game? That was a playoff game,
yes,
wasn't it?
The playoff
Yeah, that was a playoff game. Yeah,
I was like, you've got to be kidding
basement.
me. The Browns beat the Steelers. Their head coach was sitting at home.
Not even home.
Yeah, it was. I mean, what they did last season was great. It really brought hope to that franchise, and I feel like last year was a really big year for Baker, and I feel like this year he's going to show a lot of more improvement.
Yeah, it crossed my mind that he might take a step back this year, and then I was like, that would have been last year. Like, he would have taken a step back last year, because I thought the year before it was a little dodgy at times. But I'm not a fan of him just because he's an arrogant POS, but they have,
and he also plays for the Browns.
So I don't like him for that reason too. But this Browns team is scary. I mean, that's just the way I would describe it. I mean, especially,
we even talked about the running backs. They have Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb back there, and those two are beasts.
And Chubb is frightening. Kareem Hunt has his moments, but Chubb is certainly scary to go up against. So, they're definitely one of the best teams in the AFC. I would put them up there for sure. They don't have a lot of holes. I really don't think so. But again, we're in another year of COVID. Injuries are a thing. You never know. I mean, their offensive line could get banged up or whatnot, and then we could be talking about a Browns team that, I still think they're going to have a winning record regardless of how many injuries they have or whatnot. I just think they're too talented across the board to have a bad season. So
is it weird to hear everybody say the Browns are talented? Like,
and that was
so odd, because it's
not to me, because
the Browns for years
we've seen this coming. We've seen this coming. We've seen them slowly start to bring in great talent into this team and building the team the right way, and not just trying to,
well, they did it in a short amount of time. Yeah. I mean, they did it in 3 years. I mean, if you look at where they were in 2017, 2016, they had maybe one of the worst 2-year runs of any team in NFL history.
They came a long way from the Johnny Manziel area.
Oh man, that was terrible. They weren't. I mean, remember when Freddie Kitchens was their head coach? I mean, that was rock bottom.
And now he's with the Giants.
Really, yeah.
Oh, that is true.
That was rock bottom for them, and for them to be able to turn around as fast as they have, I can't recall if they got an entire new front office. It kind of seemed like it, because all of a sudden they were, they were. It's just amazing how fast they turned it around. And you're right. I mean, they did it through the draft. They also went out and had that big free agent offseason where they went and got Odell Beckham, and I believe they got Jarvis Landry in that same off season. I mean, they completely changed their tune. And they were paper champs, and then that year they went 7-9 or 6-10. So
they didn't make the playoffs that year.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago. So then last year, of course, they turned it around, and I think the sky's the limit this year for the Browns. I don't think they're.
I agree.
I don't. The AFC is so tough to gauge. I think outside Kansas City, it's tough to pick a team.
Buffalo. I would pick Buffalo. I think Buffalo and Cleveland And you could put Baltimore in there too. I think that they have those are the 4 teams right now, in my opinion, that are, and Tennessee. You can even throw Tennessee in there. Those are the teams that are really going to vie for that Super Bowl spot.
Yeah, that's true. I just don't think anyone's on Kansas City's level. I think that's, Kansas City can have a bad day. We've seen that before. There's no doubt that that's possible, but who knows how long their window is? You just don't know. So I think the AFC to me is very intriguing. In general, I think this division, especially, if obviously me being a fan of a team in that division, helps a little bit. But I think this division is really going to produce some really good football for not just this season, but for years to come, especially the Ravens and Browns. And I think the Steelers in a few years, once they figure out, the future.
Once they get Dwayne Haskins situated as the starting quarterback.
Once they give him a long 7 or 8 year contract, I think they'll be in good hands for quite a while.
All right.
So talk about the Bengals now.
Okay, so
let's briefly touch the Bengals, because there's not much to say about them.
All these 3 teams, they're pretty great. We talked about more positive. With the Steelers, that sort of 50-50, but more positives than negatives. But then,
unless they start Dwayne Haskins, then they're going to be 60.
Okay, Dwayne Haskins, thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Kirby, get ready. It's all season, buddy. It's all season.
And then we look at the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's like it looks like they're the laughing stock in this division. And
they are. They don't even have an indoor practice facility. Like, this team is cheap.
In 2021, that's crazy. And
I know,
man.
They play in Ohio.
The Bengals, I don't think they're catching up. I don't think they're catching up at all.
They're making some moves. Obviously getting Joe Burrow was obviously a move, but
they need to protect him.
They can't protect him.
Come on. I don't understand what. I understand. He played. Jamar Chase was like the guy. He's the top-rated receiver coming out of this draft. But you already have. You still have AJ Green, who, although I don't really know if he's going to even play this year. You have T. Higgins from Clemson. Like, did you really need Jamar Chase? Like, you saw your quarterback tore his ACL last year, and because of your abysmal line play, and instead of taking the guy however you say his name, Penny Sewell, something like that. I think that's how you say it. Instead of taking him, you take Jamar Chase, who apparently isn't even doing great in camp right now. But I reserve that because maybe he's just not good in camp, and he'll be great in the actual games. But it's just like, I don't know if their head coach, what's his name, Zach Taylor, is that his name?
Zach Taylor, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about him.
I just don't know if he's the guy for the job. I just don't.
Like I said, with the Lions, I think this is going to be a multi-step, multi-year rebuild process for the Bengals.
They've been in rebuild ever since. They've been in rebuild ever since, I don't know, fucking Andy Dalton left,
Yeah.
The Zach Taylor move to me is one of those where everyone saw what Sean McVay did, and a lot of teams tried to make that their next decision. Zach Taylor was a quarterback's coach in 2018, and then all of a sudden in 2019 he's the head coach of the Bengals. So
honestly, that's been the trend, ever since that, the year that the Rams made the Super Bowl, and everybody was praising that.
Seen several teams do it.
It's just like, literally, you just have to have a cup of coffee with Sean McVay and you get a job in the NFL.
That's right.
I think he used to be in Washington's building. To think Washington used to have Sean McVay.
Don't remind me.
And they had another coach who was in the Super Bowl, but his dad was kind of pulling the strings on the Robert Griffin stuff. Anyway, let's not go back to those sore spots for Josh Kirby.
Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there when we talk about Washington.
Right. Yeah, I think they're improving, but it's very slow, and they're not going to keep up with this division. Obviously, they did address the offensive line
practice facility, and then that's freaking God.
Just crazy.
Cheap bastards, man.
Out of everything you're talking about, how they don't have a indoor
because think about that, they're not investing in the facilities. So, like, how great is that team facility to develop your players? You want great facilities to thrive in the NFL.
That is true. That is true. I will give you that.
What was it? Yeah. They
The
did
Bengals.
Yeah.
It's the There's not a lot to say about the Bengals.
They're the new Browns.
They signed.
They might
They
be
signed
the
a
new
couple of guys
Browns
to help
in this
out.
division.
They signed a couple of guys to help out in the pass rush, Riley Reef and Quentin Spain. Outside of that, of course, we talked about Jamar Chase, or Carlos did already, and he's not hasn't made a great impact so far. But again, it's you can never really tell in preseason. It's hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
We have to wait till we get to the regular season. Also, he's going to be the go-to guy for Joe Burrow because he doesn't have anybody else. So.
I mean, he's got T. Higgins from Clemson, who was pretty good.
Yeah, true. True.
It's just, the issue is Joe Burrow is still going to be getting hit.
Yeah. They drafted the tackle from Clemson, Jackson Carman. Yeah, Carman. And he's pretty good, obviously. So I'm sure he's going to be starting because I don't think they really have anybody else. I said their ceiling is a 7-10 season. I'd say it's probably lower. If they win 6 games this year, I think it's a successful season, to be honest.
God, what a mediocre franchise.
Yeah.
They're probably going to win 2 or 3 games.
I really don't see this team improving much. I really don't.
It's just because if Burrow will win them some games,
Right. He'll also lose them some games because he's a young guy. But
I don't know. I mean, don't forget he was a 4-year. It's not like he's a young guy, like too young.
Yeah, as far as that, he did play for 4 years in college. That is true.
Well, I mean, realistically, he only played for like 2 years because 2 years at Ohio State, he was on the bench. And then he had the 1 year, which was the senior year, where he blew up. But, I think Burrow will win them more games than lose games. But I feel like ultimately that offensive line is where they're going to fail.
Yeah, you hate to say that another injury could be on the horizon, but
if he gets hurt again,
it doesn't look good. If he gets hurt again, he's done. I really think he's done because he's still not the same ever since his severe injury from last year. He's talked about that he's not the same.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens when he actually gets into the game and actually plays real
outside
real
of preseason, because he's gonna play probably one series in preseason, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
If he even plays.
Yeah, so we'll see how he does there. But if we go through this season and he's still getting demolished and he hurts him, he gets hurt again. Honestly, Cincinnati's gonna really have to look at themselves and be like, "What the fuck are we doing to this kid who has, who again in college was being compared to Tom Brady?" Now, nobody's gonna be Tom Brady, but the way
that was
his
ridiculous.
Pocket presence. His pocket presence, the way he was commanding the field, it was Brady-esque.
Well,
for college,
he had 6 seconds to throw. And he had the best of the best as far as receivers. That's
but what I'm saying is, you see what his potential would be if you actually put shit around him.
Sure.
Compared to where he doesn't have anything around him. He's just getting killed.
Yeah.
But we can see what he can be if he actually is protected. If he's got the weapons around him, but he's just got to have time to get it to them.
And he needs a better head coach because Zach Taylor.
I agree. I don't know if Zach Taylor's the guy.
I don't know who Zach Taylor was. I had to look him up. I knew who he was their head coach. I didn't know his background. It's interesting to see that he went from a quarterback's coach to straight to a head coach. That's
think about it. It's Cincinnati. They kept Marvin Lewis for how long, and he didn't win shit.
Yeah, Marvin Lewis overstayed his welcome.
Well, he never won a playoff game. But I'm sure they miss him now because at least
I don't know if they do because go to the playoffs. But what are you doing in the playoffs? You're not doing shit.
Nothing.
Well, it's better than
right in the
now.
wild card game.
But I'd rather
be in the playoffs than lose. But win 3 games.
You're in the playoffs. You're playing the early Saturday game. True. It's not as if you're gaining much from being in the playoffs and just getting the first round exit.
And people know it. And people start saying it all the time. That's it. I think that's it for the Bengals. Yeah,
I got nothing else.
Yeah,
they've got a long way to go in this division. They've got a lot of young players. So that's the one positive thing for them is they probably have a lot of guys who are going to be with this organization for a while. But
they gotta protect Joe Burrow,
and they need better direction.
And I feel like that's where they failed.
Yep.
Is they didn't get anybody really.
Absolutely agree.
Absolutely. So that wraps up the NFC and AFC North. Make sure you tune in next week for the NFC and AFC East. I'm looking forward to it, boys. And then the NFL season is right on the horizon.
Oh man, next episode's going to get heated because obviously, you know, Kirby is the fan of the team with no name because their name was racist. And, you know, they were the ones that gave us Dewey Haskins, you know, his favorite quarterback. And of course, I'm a Cowboys fan. So, you know, it's going to get intense.
That about wraps it up for another edition of the Kirby on Sports podcast. For my co-host and lead contributor, Dan Dempsky, and Swiss Army knife Carlos Martinez. Thank you once again, boys, for joining us on another edition. Once again, next week will be the wrapping up of the NFC and AFC division previews with the East. So until then, make sure you check out the Kirby on Sports podcast on all streaming platforms. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment on YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to our website, www.kirbyonsports.com. For our sponsors, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, and Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation. This has been another productions of the Kirby on Sports podcast. Until the next time you hear our voice, always remember to create greatness. So long and peace out.